Hey guys, it's K Journey, and I am back today to talk about plotting serialized stories or like episodic plotting. Um, so last year, around this time, I realized that I really liked the idea of doing like an episodic something. I was thinking of reading episodes on YouTube. I was thinking about adding them to Spotify. I was cutting up my books into episodes and seeing how that worked out. I got really into it, and then, and I'm sorry if you guys can hear the traffic. There's literally nothing I can do about it, but I have to do this video now because the kids are sleeping. It's a thing. Anyway, um, so I kept running into this problem of like, I'm taking these books and I'm cutting them up and they're not coming out as episodes. So some of them are boring, some of them are other things. And it's because I wasn't writing episodic serialized fiction. I was writing books and cutting them up. So I did a bunch of research. I read a couple of books on writing serialized fiction. They were both really good. I think one of them, I'm still subscribed to her email list. It's Kimbu. I cannot remember the name of it, but I'll link that book down below. And then Save the Cat Writes episodic. I think I forget exactly what it is. I will link that one below too. My brain is not in gear this morning yet. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so I read those books and I was like, well, this is cool, but there's no framework. There's vague ideas, there's lots of really good guidelines, there's really cool information on keeping, the story going season after season after season, but there was nothing about how to actually sit down and structure a season. Nothing like the plotting method I use, which is Katie Tastic's 27 scene outline, which gives me, at the very least, even if I don't follow it, which often I don't follow it completely, it gives me placeholders for, okay, I need something here. Whether I decide to put a twist here or an emotional scene here, I need something here. And it gives me kind of some framework. There was nothing. Like, literally not anywhere that I looked did I find anything that was like a structured, here's a scaffolding to build your story on. And use whatever you need to, but here's a scaffolding. There's nothing like that I've found, at least, for plotting episodic serialized fiction. And so I was like, okay, I have to come up with something on my own, which, I mean, yay, like this is a good idea. So what I did is I sat down and I took everything that I knew about plotting books from Save the Cat, from Cam Weiland, from, James Scott Bell, from like all of these other places where I was learning about plotting. And I went, how can I use this to create an overall story for a season that that cuts down into an overall story for an episode? And instead of like looking at it as a book. But however, the episodic serialized fiction that I'm writing, I do want to eventually turn into books. I want to be able to make as much money and create as much demand for this product as possible. So what I'm doing is this is the system that I've discovered, and I'm writing it right now, which is going really well. Actually, I'm very happy with it. So a book equals 2 seasons, right? Okay, so if we're looking at kind of the rising tension in a book, we've got these different moments where we've got, the climax, and then we've got a resolution. And if it's a series, then there's going to be something added in here that's going to be like, go to the next book. Then you've got your midpoint, and you've got your darkest moment, and then you've got usually like your big twist and your key incident, the incident that drags your character into the situation of the story. So what I did is I went, we're going to go like this, and we're going to shrink this into a macro. So season 1 is the build up to a midpoint that is also a climax. Because your midpoint is kind of the big turning point in the story already. So if I make that into a climactic moment, it actually works. It translates really well. And then, of course, you have a bit of a resolution, and then it jumps into the beginning of what's going to lead to the rest of the story, right? So And then, you have your key moment, and then you have this arc in between. And I really needed to be able to create an arc in between that would translate really well into an arc to an arc that actually would turn into, like, you've got an arc and an arc that would actually really turn into a full arc for a book. And then I needed to break that down even further into episodes, but we'll get into that next week on how I created the episodes. Or the framework that I put in place for plotting the episodes. Right now, what I want to talk about is this. So this is the framework that I came up with based on the story that I want to write. Okay, so I'm preemptively apologizing if my kiddo makes a bunch of noise. It is what it is. So the way that I write stories, and this is also not a part of the Katie-tastic system. I just kind of add this in. Is I like to write storylines that run in tandem and then weave in and out of each other. And sometimes some characters are going this way and they branch off and they do different things. I grew up reading The Lord of the Rings a lot. Like, I tend to write intertwining things. So the first thing I want to point out on here are my side quest episodes. So this would be like a full book, right? This is a full book. And then I've got these side quests that will weave into the main story as it goes. Not only that, but it gives a break in it, so it creates a different kind of tension, which is great. As long as the side quest is still as interesting as the main story, then it's fine. If you're doing these and they're not as interesting or they're forced, don't do them. Like, just don't, because it'll take away from the main story. The only reason to add these in is to add to the main story, not take away from it. And so what'll happen is the side quest, I know from this season, I've got actually 2 different side quests in here. So there's these 2 that are together and these 3 that are together. I think it's like that. And I'd have to look at it. And like, these 2 are one character and these 3 are another character. And then one of these characters, I think is this character, blends into season 2, and the side quests in this one are only this other character for a little bit, and then in the season 3 it changes a little bit. And so it's, as long as at some point these storylines converge and then split apart again, it works. So that's the first thing that I wanted to point out. Okay, so I needed more colored pens. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to point out is so this right here is the climax, the resolution, and the new question for next season. So one of the things about a key incident, or what drags or hooks readers into a story, is that they have questions that they're, you present a question at the beginning and they're like, oh, I wonder what that is. What is that? What is that? What is that? And you have to make it interesting enough for people to want to keep going. And you can answer questions immediately, but you have to immediately after that present a new question. So that's what I want to point out here, is like, this is going to be like the midpoint for the season. It's going to be a massive twist in the story that creates, like, there's some sort of character growth here that changes the story. Just like at the end of the story, there's a character growth that changes the story, that leads to the resolution, or would lead to next season. So, and I'm just going to keep twisting. So each season has this climax, resolution, and then new question for next season. And then when I get to, like, my final season, I plan on doing 12 seasons. This is how deep I tumbled into this enthusiastically once I had it. I know my overall, like, what each season is about, and then I've got all of these plotted out for up to season, or all the way through season 6. So I've got half of it completely plotted out down into episodes. These are each episodes. So instead of each of these being a scene, it's an episode. So, like, here, let's pick one at random. Let's say my midpoint episode. So my midpoint episode is like, this is going to be an echo of this, right? Because each season needs a midpoint. And this is where it branches off from writing a book. Like, if this whole thing is a book and this is the midpoint and this is the resolution, the climax and the resolution, what are these, right? So these don't actually fit into that old framework, but they need to be there inside the season. This is why the season needs to be kind of a smaller version of writing a book. So this is my midpoint. So this whole episode, everything that happens in this episode is leading to this moment for my character where there's some major growth. Now, maybe like this, there's more growth for character B in here, or more growth for character C over here. Like it kind of depends. But this is where there needs to be a big momentous change in the story. And my main character or characters need to have some sort of an emotional flip that goes, oh, this is what's happening. So it's another twist in the story right here. And then, okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. So, but we've also got a twist here, like things change and move throughout as the story goes. So if we're just looking at one season, let's fold this in half because I can do that. I has the ability. Okay, so if we're just focusing in on one season, each of these episodes creates one of the plot points on like Katie Tastics, or well, I mean not Katie Tastics in here too much. But there's the different things of different plotting tools, methods, what have you in here. So yeah, so each episode will have like, let's say we're going to the first one. So if we've got 1 and 2, so this one is opening, introduce the situation, and then this is introduce the conflict. So what this is it'll be like the key incident. And this is where we'll meet our characters and our bad guy. This episode itself will have its own arc where we meet these people and understand the situation a little bit better. And that'll drag us into the next episode where we see how bad the bad guy can be in the very beginning. And it'll have its own arc. And then we'll jump into the next episode, which is where my characters go, this really, like what we're doing isn't working. Let's try to change what we're doing. And they shift something, they change something, and it gets worse. So, and you can see how each of these little episodes, which I'm doing 5,000 word episodes, creates a situation that, twists and turns along into the series arc. And then each episode arc has its own arc. So it's a series of arced stories that create a overall arc that is mirrored in the next season, which creates an overall arc. And then these seasons create a book. It was really complicated figuring out how to do this, and I'm not even sure if it's going to work. I am prefacing this right now with, I'm not even sure this is going to work. I am writing season 1 of my story right now. It looks really good in plotting. This really, really worked for me. Like, I was like, yeah, I can do this here and this here and this here. Like, and some of these, again, I set up my framework and then I just ignored what I put up there. So like, I'll have, okay, twist and redirect will be switched with fun and games, or like fun and games will be down, down here or something. Like I didn't follow it exactly, but it's the framework that I needed. For some reason, my brain desperately needed the framework. So this is my framework. Here you go. You guys can see it. I will let you know while I'm writing it if this is working or if I need to change it. I'm really happy with it. And then next week, I'm going to talk about how I break down each of these episodes into scenes and kind of why I did exactly what I did specifically and the math behind it, because there's math behind it after this point. From this point on, for this is just story scaffolding and the math doesn't matter. But once we get into like the actual episodes, the math matters, and like what I put in there matters. And so it needs to be a little bit more trimmed down and concrete. And anyway, we'll get into that next Wednesday. I'm going to go take care of my sick kiddo and make myself coffee. I have not had coffee yet this morning. Save me. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you liked this, if you enjoyed seeing the craziness that's coming out of me, or I shouldn't say that because that sounds really weird. I'm going to go with it. It's going to be weird. If you like the weirdness, please subscribe, and I will see you next week.